It's new. This meeting is being recorded. Your image or voice may be broadcast. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is right over there.
To the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to move on to public comments. And first we have Katrina Lawton.
I first just want to say thank you for allowing me to speak, and I'm just going to read an email that I wrote to almost everybody here. I do first want to say before I read this that I'm not placing any blame on anybody. I just think as a community, we have a duty to do better for our children regarding security. I don't think the burden is fair to be on teachers for security. Any school employee, and then rely on the police department when they're not set up for success. So, my name is Katrina Lawton. I'm a mother of a third grader at Boylston Elementary. Given the recent school shooting in Texas and the current state of our society, I'm requesting an armed security guard at the school at all times while children are in the building. This is an immediate request. The security at our schools is not sufficient in this current environment. Placing our teachers and staff in between children and a shooter is dangerous and very irresponsible. We need a trained officer or veteran at each school to properly protect our children and staff. We can't afford to wait for meetings or legislature. We have a duty to protect our children and the staff while inside the buildings. We need to protect them like we do politicians, banks, and federal buildings. I wish I didn't have to be up here. I wish it wasn't like this, but the sad reality is, it is like this. And we can't wait. We have to make sure the officers, the staff are ready and prepared because unfortunately, this is the environment we live in, this could happen. And it can happen in our small little town. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. Jessica Tagliaverdi.
Good evening, I'm Jessica Tagliaverdi. I'm a third grader at BES as well. So on May 24th, the 4 present members of the Boylston-Berlin Regional School Committee voted to pass an amendment to the EBCFA, or face coverings and COVID protocols. This protocol amends DESE, Massachusetts DPH, CDC current recommendations by removing a mask requirement on days 6 through 10 of confirmed COVID positive students and staff. It also removes the requirement of unvaccinated close contacts from quarantining for 5 days and masking until day 10 from last exposure. Every medical provider's return to school note requires masking until day 10 following DESE, Mass DPH, and CDC. I confirmed last week with Massachusetts DPH epidemiologists that no new data has come out since December 30th, 2021, when CDC changed their quarantine policy to 5 days quarantine and 5 days masked if over 24 hours asymptomatic. The CDC decreased from 14 days because Omicron showed to have viral shedding closer to 10 days, rather than 14 for Delta variant. Omicron still sheds virus beyond day 5. If masks are removed, more students and staff will become exposed and sick with COVID. My own daughter tested positive on antigen day 8, even with mild illness for only 1 day. How does the hypothetical emotional toll of a student or staff member wearing a mask on days 6 through 10 outweigh the emotional and physical toll of another student or staff member being out for at least 5 days? And then any additional toll of an at-risk relative is then exposed and gets sick. My daughter wore her KN95. She was exposed 6 days in a row at least from 6 other cases within her class. She wore her KN95. She missed softball. She missed photos for softball. She missed her recorder concert that she worked so hard to achieve her little black ribbon on her recorder because we can't wear masks in school. When did the individual freedom of a confirmed positive COVID person outweigh the public health of the community? I live in Massachusetts and not Texas because I recognize that public health is sometimes more important than individual freedom. Last weekend, there was 5,060 COVID cases in Massachusetts. 6 people died. 660 were hospitalized, 67 in the ICU, and 22 intubated. Thank God that COVID is a usually mild disease for children, but we cannot lose sight that we are a community with individuals that can still become very sick and die. A childhood friend I grew up with in Boylston, attended Boylston Elementary School and Tohoto, was hospitalized for a month and intubated, but thankfully survived. And now she lives with a tracheotomy scar. Is her life worth any less than an individual wearing a mask for 5 days after being infected? Last meeting, the school committee cited the fact that in school contact tracing produced very few positive cases within the school. I have to make a very important point. That fact was with a mask mandate. There was very little spread in school with a mask mandate. The schools and the community have no such protection during this recent surge within the Boylston-Berlin Regional School District and cannot be used for the amendment to the last policy. It is extremely dangerous for the school committee to remove these mask requirements on days 6 through 10 and for the unvaccinated exposures. It goes against the CDC, Massachusetts DPH, and DESE guidelines. It puts our students at unnecessary risk, and it puts our staff at risk and our community. Our school nurses were not involved in the decision to make this amendment to DESE policy. They were not present for the subcommittee meeting on May 18th, nor the May 24th regular school committee meeting when the amendment was voted upon. The nurses' letter back in February was also ignored when the mask mandate was coming down, and their pleas for different policies were ignored. Our town's local boards of health were not involved in the forming of this policy. In fact, no person, to my knowledge, in the healthcare field was involved in the amendment passed by the school committee on May 24th. Please feel free to correct this assessment. I encourage parents and community members to let the Boylston-Berlin Regional School District know that policies that go outside the CDC, Mass Department of Public Health, and DESE are not acceptable. It puts our children and community at an unnecessary risk for personal freedoms. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Is there anyone else that would like to make a public comment? We're going to move on to communications. Does anyone have a communication that they would like to share? Did you raise your hand? I thought you raised your hand.
Yeah.
I would just like to note that we did receive a letter from the nurses late this afternoon, and to please look at that. It's in your packet. I also was told by a parent and wanted to share that the girls varsity lacrosse team, coached by Deb Draper, Eric Rubino, and Laura Banis, had a playoff game yesterday, and they came in second in our league and finished as a runner-up in the Class B CMADA tournament. The team plays Hull tomorrow at 4:15 here at Tohoto in the first round of the MIAA tournament. Come support our girls and go green. This is a very young team with grades 6 through 12 playing, and only one senior with a lot of heart, Bella Yuba, who graduated on Sunday. Kudos to the coaches and to the girls who, despite being a really young team, have done amazing things this year. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Opposed? Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented passes. Okay, we are going to move on to Mr. Conry. Yes.
So you have my report. I'm just going to run through in order it's shown there. The first item is related to the Regional Transportation Revolving Fund. And with school committee approval, we'd like to place at least $50,000, potentially more, in a revolving fund. We get a reimbursement from the state for this. We've in fact budgeted to put this in the revolving fund and have it as an offset to transportation expenses next year. So, we need this vote to support the FY23 budget. It does require a school committee vote to deposit the funds there, which is why it's on the agenda. There's no questions on that. I can move on. The second item I'm going to defer. That will be presented at the first school committee meeting next year, the annual authorization of student activity accounts. The essentially the same list of funds. There might be one additional account added related to readiness, certification and training that I believe used to be a fund that might just need to be reactivated. The next item is an annual authorization of revolving funds. These are all existing funds. I did highlight changes. There's recommendations on limits to funds, and there's one highlighted fund that's been spent down, the revolving kindergarten fund that we no longer use. That's highlighted as well. So later in the meeting during the business items, I request that this be approved. It's essentially the same as last year, with some very minor changes. We do have, the pandemic's created some financial challenges for families. I had this in my report last year as well. We are recommending that we clear all balances as of the end of this fiscal year via a combination of write-offs and partial payments, as well as donations related to balances owed. This is primarily for preschool. We're fairly up to date in the after-school program. So we seek your approval to do so. I will say that balances won't just be removed. We'll require families to respond and provide some demonstration of inability to pay. But recognizing there are cases, and we will have parents who do document that they cannot pay or have some financial challenges. We wanted the flexibility to write them off or to solicit donations. We did receive some donations last year. So
Can I
that's,
ask you a question, Bob?
yes.
I think that's a really thoughtful thing to do. What is the balance?
I think we did get some recent payments. I'd say it's probably around $5,500 to $6,000.
Just for preschool?
Thank you.
Just for preschool?
Just for preschool, correct. That's not necessarily a long time period of payments.
Yeah, it's just from this year, right?
Yes, and but it doesn't take that long to get to $5,000. So, I'd request and recommend a vote for flexibility on that. The alternative would be we could tell families they can no longer attend, which we tried to avoid during the pandemic. So, that's the guidance that was provided. We can certainly terminate eligibility for people to attend this program.
Well, do we have any programs that people can apply to when they go into the program, indicating that they need assistance before they enroll?
We don't have a good program as a district to do that. We do with athletics have the ability to apply for fee waivers. Students for special ed can attend for free because they're at the age of 3. They can have IEP services. We're required to provide IEP services. So there are some students who will attend for free because they're special ed students. But regular ed students, it's on a lottery basis. We have typically more that want to go than there are eligible spots. At this point, that's an idea the district could think about. You would probably need to then budget for the general fund to absorb some of that, or adjust the rates of families that can pay. Absorb more.
Hey, Bob, one other question on that. Is this the first time this has happened? or
It
is
happened
this-
last year as well.
So just the 10 years?
Yeah. Then we couldn't really run it in FY20. They kind of stopped in March. We didn't charge for it because it's all there's no further questions. I'll move on to the last item. So this is something I wanted to leave the district before I left. We've invested in a lot of things in recent years that were important from an educational standpoint, and we found ways to kind of manage financially. My strong recommendation is that the first thing that's put into the budget next few years are reductions in the use of school choice funds so that the goal is so the district has financial stability going forward. Right now, we, in the budgets, plan to spend more money in school choice than we take in. Particularly, Berlin Memorial is not an issue. We have a very, very healthy balance of school choice funds there. At BES, it's diminishing, in part because the school's filling up with resident students. We haven't reduced the expense accordingly. For various reasons. Schools have had a lot of needs. And then at Tohoto, it has a very healthy surplus, but we do budget to spend it down each year. And through budget savings, we've been able to avoid that. My recommendation to kind of stabilize things is listed there, but you can read it. I'm not going to read it here, but it's basically, if we make adjustments to how much school choice we're using, and I'll leave this for my successor and Jeff will have it as well. We should look to reduce our school choice usage in Boylston Elementary and Tohoto, and get to a point where the revenue that we take in is equal to the expense that we plan into our budget. Yes.
The expenses that are listed here is coming out of school choice. Are those school choice expenses related to external placements as well, or are they covering other line items in the budget?
Those are covering teacher salaries. The placements that you're talking about is a separate line, it's school choice tuitions, so that's not like this. And those are, as an FYI, fairly small. We don't have a lot of students going out of district. We're a net revenue generator for school choice. We have more students that might come here.
I guess I was referring to some of those special placements we have that were particularly expensive this year.
Those are out of district special ed tuitions, those are completely different. So that's the heads up on school choice. So, when you are planning next year, I would advise to be careful to make that a priority. Similarly, the town of Berlin has kind of highlighted this. It's not a requirement, but other post-employment benefits for retirees, we pay for those costs out of our budget, and the idea would be that over time, there's an OPEB trust that's created. When that gets enough money in it, that can generate, it's from its income money to pay for these retirement benefits. So we've created a trust, we've started to fund it. What I've mapped out here is a plan to fund it at higher levels so that at some point you're not spending the current budget to pay for benefits for people who don't work there anymore. That should be, the term is intergenerational equity. You should be paying for those costs during the lifetime of the employees while they're here. It's not a requirement. It's a practice. There's a lot of districts and towns that are moving towards getting higher funded. This plan has some significant increases, but I think it's mapped out in a way that you can do this and still invest in educational resources over the next 10 years. So that's a longer term one, the school choice one, I think you can rectify fairly quickly. So I just wanted that to be out there and you can have it. I think somebody stepping in, there's going to be many things to do. So.
Bob, one more question for you. When I look at these and see, the healthy balance at Tohoto, versus a very small balance at BES, are we required to keep those funds within the school as you've listed them? Could we borrow from one fund to help support another?
That's a good question. I would say, I feel like from an equity perspective, when these were three separate districts, the town of Berlin accumulated the funds in Berlin Memorial School. So those, I think.
Yeah, I don't think I want to steal Berlin's money for Boylston police money.
I told
I'm wondering about the Tohoto money. Some of that is Boylston money, right?
You could make an argument that, some ratio of Tohoto is withdrawn, maybe whatever the regional budget is, 66%, 34%, maybe withdraw it and reapportion some to elementary schools. I don't think that would be unfair. Not the principal might argue with Union Jeff. That's my report.
Okay, we're waiting for some people, so we're going to move on to Ms. Fitzpatrick, who is going to give us an update.
Sure. So you have my report as well. I have a few things to report on. The first is that the Special Education Parent Advisory Council awarded a small scholarship again this year to a student that met this criteria. A student that attends ASPET did win the scholarship this year, which is why we didn't hear it presented at graduation this weekend. But I did want to share that information with the committee. On to preschool. Historically, the Berlin preschool has had 2 sessions, a Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning session and a Tuesday, Thursday morning session. For this school year, we had an increase in students with special education needs, and we added a 3rd program in the afternoon on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It turns out that was a 1-year need only, so we'll be going back to having just 2 morning programs next school year. On my next item, on May 24th, DESE announced that at the end of this school year and at the end of the continuation of the programs that run through the summer, such as extended school year and the acceleration academies, that will mark the end of the state-run school testing program. So they will no longer be providing at-home testing through the schools or symptomatic testing supplies, or any other districts that are using other versions of testing, such as pool testing, et cetera, will be discontinued. And there's a recommendation for districts to continue to do symptomatic testing in the nurse's office through arrangements that are made through the district. I updated the vaccination data for you one more time through the end of the school year for all 3 buildings. And all 3 buildings have seen, an ongoing increase in those vaccination rates for students, as well as the final report here on the participation from staff and students in the at-home testing program. The last distribution of those testing kits is going out to families this Friday, and we did have the opportunity to order additional supplies again for our extended school year program and the acceleration academy that will be running this summer. So at-home testing kits will be provided to the families that opted in during the school year.
At this time, I would like to tell Mr. Conry that if he would like to exit the meeting, we'd like to thank him for his service.
Before the principals. I did drive off today, so
Okay, so we are going to move on to reports, and our first report is from Superintendent Zinni.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit about the security plans that we've had in the building and things we've done. I do want to say this, the security of these buildings, they really are the responsibility of everyone on a day-to-day basis. It is a responsibility of the teachers and the administrators themselves. And I think
We can't hear you, sorry.
Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry. So I'll start again. We wanted to talk a little bit about some of the security measures we've put into our schools. And I do want to emphasize that the security in our buildings is the responsibility of everybody. It's the responsibility of the administrators, it's the responsibility of the teachers, the central office, and the school committee. And on a day-to-day basis, it's the school committee probably has the least amount of responsibility in those buildings. Either something happens during the day, it's the teachers and the administrators. We're going to have to work that solution out, at least until the police get there. So I know police probably talk about that later. But we've been working on security measures for our buildings. Before I got here, when I got here, Carol had been working with a crisis management, a local crisis management team, and put a lot of measures into place. So we'll go over some of the things that we've put in place and some of the things that we have for the future. And then I think if the officers want to speak, that would be good. On all of the windows, that roughly 2 inches up from the ground and up, we have this 3M security film that we've put on. That means that anybody who tries to smash through those windows, it'd take them 4 or 5 minutes to get through. And if you want to go to YouTube and just look that up, they have pretty impressive demonstrations on how effective that film is. We put buzzers and cameras at all of the entrances, as well as change the locks on all the doors from keyed systems to swipe card systems. We've also trained staff in the ALICE training, and before we did a big training right before the pandemic, and we will continue that next year. Students are familiar with the protocols. Again, we need to continue to work on that to make sure that they and the staff know what to do in an emergency. The administrative team and all of the first responders in both towns meet biannually to discuss just whatever's going on in the community, anything that's happening in their world. You have to remember that as educators, this is really not what we're expert at doing. And so having the first responders bring those ideas to us and suggest solutions in our building is very helpful. As a matter of fact, the idea for 3M film came from the first responders. That was a couple of years ago. We've added tabletop simulations to our crisis management team meetings. And these are exercises in which the principals sit down and the first responders present various situations that the principals then have to respond to in real time. And as they go through them, the first responders give them other hurdles to get over. And so they just go through those responses, and rather than just having a plan and talking about it, it gives them a chance to practice what they're going to do in a real situation. This year, this committee signed an MOU with both police departments that allowed for sharing of information. So that'll also be helpful. We have SROs in each school. They are full-time police officers in both towns, and they work in our schools part-time. We've also numbered all of the outside glass in this building so that in an emergency, the first responders from the outside will know what room is which, because they're not as familiar with these buildings. Any questions about that so far before I talk a little bit about things we have planned? Okay. Based on the budgeted funds, we are going to add some additional security locks to BMS and to Honto this year. Currently at BES, if you've ever gone in the building, there's one, you have to be buzzed at one door, then there's a vestibule, and then there's another door there. Both of them require you to be buzzed in. So we're going to add those two solutions to both to Honto and to BMS. In addition, that 3M film that I just talked about that we have on the other windows will be added to the inside of that vestibule, which will in effect trap somebody in there, and they can push out, but they won't be able to push into the building. We'll continue the tabletop exercises. Carol and I met with the first responders Monday and talked to them about starting to design a tabletop exercise for the summer. So they're working on that, some version of that now, and we'll present it at our summer meeting. We have crisis manuals in all of our schools. We're in the process of updating those, and those will be done shortly. In addition, if you were at graduation, you noticed there were more officers than usual, so we will continue to have additional police presence at our big events, and that's always helpful. It's always a deterrent. So, Carol, is there anything else you wanted to? Do the officers want to say something?
From our standpoint, the best,
Chief of
John Anziano, the police chief of Boylston. So we have an excellent working relationship, upstairs with the school department and then with our principals. There's a free line of communication. I think it was Diane that started it, where, the police department lets the schools know, whether it's the elementary school or Tohoto, if we're dealing with kids that they may not realize that the goal of that is to cut down on all the red flags. If the school isn't sharing information with us, we're not sharing information with the school, we're only getting half the picture, and then maybe some of these kids get overlooked. But we have that constant free flow of information, that's really helped us, on both levels. Adapting is part of our job. That's kind of what we do. There are obviously terrible incidents that happen, and at these meetings we share knowledge. Chief Sergeant Eric Goody, Barbado, and I, we have these meetings with our colleagues to figure out what the new best practices are. So like in education, there's constant changes, and unfortunately we're progressive where we do change with times. So one of the things is the flip books will be discussed. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, but they're emergency flip books that are in every classroom. They have a list of different scenarios on there. One of the things we're talking about for the July meeting is make sure we go over and we update that. But I think what's important here is the free flow of communication that the school has between the police department has with the school.
Also, Officer Barbado, Officer Goulding, Officer Goody, as Chief Annunziata just said, are the two resource officers in our buildings. And Chief Shatner, I was wondering if you could just, we did our meeting on Monday. You talked about Alice drills being a skill set and the importance of them, not necessarily here, but in life. And I thought it was a great point. And, part of the issue we've had, we've been doing fire drills since forever. And I don't think a school's burned down since the 50s. And there's so much stuff in them now. They're not built, they're non-combustible materials. But we continue to do them. And there's reasons for it. So and the same thing has to happen with the Alice drills. We're not there yet, but that's our goal.
Yeah, well, I think the major thing is that when we do Alice training, it really says a school shooter training. And I think we should get away from that. That's going to be a life skill. It's going to be active shooter training. Just last weekend alone, there was 10 active shootings in the United States. When we do the fire drills in school, I remember ever since I was a kid, and they still do it, you bring that knowledge home to your own house for fire drills. And I think that the active shooter training, we have to stop saying in school shootings, it's active shooter training, it's a life skill. And I think we really need to start incorporating it into the kids' lives. And I think it's going to help them pass school into college and then into adulthood as well. I mean, the chances of it happening here, very slim, but, you can go to the Garden for a concert, you can go to Gillette Stadium, the Tweeter Center, or not Tweeter, Xfinity, I'm dating myself. But just life in general, traveling, vacation, Las Vegas, anywhere. So I think we have to stop calling it like Alice training school shooter drills. It should just be active shooter drills. It should be a life skill.
And I think one of the components that everyone's kind of been forgetting is that these active threat drills, it's all about education. So I think that got lost over time, where people are just going through the motions because they've been told they have to go through the motions. But the goal of this is to slow everything down and educate our staff why we're doing it, educate our students why we're doing it. By educating them, we're preparing them for life, but we're reducing the anxiety and any concerns they may have with it. Because talking, at least to the elementary school kids, talking to them, it's not the fear of doing the drill and the police there. It's a disruption to their routine, and them not knowing what to do is giving them the anxiety. So if we slow it down and we take the time to explain it, I think it'll be more successful program, but we're setting them up for their futures. Because unfortunately, it's a part of our reality.
And on opening day, we usually, it's really the only time during the year where we have all of our staff in this room and representatives from both police departments will be here, talking just about what the two chiefs just mentioned, that it has to be a skill that they take with them. Again, to reiterate what Chief Shotton said, schools are still very safe places. But, this week, I was watching the TV just this weekend. I saw the video just on a street corner where the shooting broke out. And it's more likely that if it happens, that's where our kids will be in those kind of situations. We want to make sure that they're safe in those also. And so I think they're right. I think the messaging about all of this has been in the wrong direction. It's probably because it's only after the school shooting that we talk about this stuff publicly. And we really should be talking about it all the time. So we're gonna step it up and do more communication and more training, and along with making our buildings safe. That stuff we have control of.
I have a quick question. How many times a year, I know they did it this year because my son came home and talked about it before the Texas shooting. He didn't like it. But how many times a year are you proposing the kids do like an Alice drill?
We're gonna propose that they do them 3 times a year. Well, we're not gonna propose it, we're gonna require it to be done 3 times a year. That's how many times fire drills are done in the building. And, again, we gotta get used to these things. My personal beliefs aside, the principal's personal beliefs aside, they have to be done. And so we will do them this year. They'll be required, and this will be on the scene for each of them.
I have another question. I read that you said there'll be extra police for major events. What constitutes a major event?
One that I'm at. Well, like a graduation.
Right, I was thinking sporting event or no?
No, I mean, anything big, like, so we usually, I believe we have 2 at the graduation, usually we had 4. So, anything where we have the public, a lot of the public in, we'll essentially double it.
Bingo. I mean, did we even have officers? I think we did. Didn't even know.
They were the biggest winners. We didn't.
Biggest winner.
I think also.
Yeah, I think you answered the question. I just want to point out to the Boylston people, the Berlin representatives know what we're doing in the schools and see us there very active, and we're part of the life there and their families. And the superintendent pointed out the 2 chiefs, but what you haven't seen before, and I'm very proud of, is Chief Shartner, new chief, and Chief Annunzio are communicating on a daily basis. This didn't happen before. I've always felt like an outsider, and now we're included, and they're meeting weekly and talking about strategies. We share information. We were at the one in Boylston. That never happened before. We came up there with Berlin representatives to see what can we do to help and share information. And it's very important to us. So the fluid between the principals and the superintendent have increased so much more. Prior to the recent incidents, we saw this when we saw the change in regime. And we were looking forward to this, and it's very open. And what I like also is he introduced, we're police officers, but I know also I'm a parent first, as all these gentlemen in uniform are. And our kids go to public schools, and we're very confident how safe they are. We watch the numbers and we're well aware of that. So we really care about your kids and your staff. As far as the drills, the teachers and staff can be doing internal things. Doesn't have to be a complete Alice drill. Every day, learning a life skill, looking at the room and doing things. And we work behind the scenes with tactical things that we can't share, obviously. But we keep the superintendent informed and the principals, and it works very well together. And I'm just proud of the cooperation more than anything that I've seen in the last 6 months prior to these major incidents. And you must see that too, from the superintendent's point and the staff does, so.
Yeah, I just thank you all for being here and being part of this conversation tonight. I guess, from my perspective, we can't solve the problem of guns on a local school committee, right? And at the end of the day, though, there are 2 things I think we can impact. One of them is the physical facility and securing it. The other one is a police presence, right? My understanding is that if we currently we have school resource officers that are assigned part-time to the district, to the schools, and will be there at varying times at the schools. Is consideration being given to a more permanent, full-time presence in the schools? And if so, whose decision really is that? Because budgetarily, sounds like a town decision to me at that point.
When I think I shared this story with Chief Annunziata when I got here. When I first arrived in 2018, I had a visit from a select board member who talked about having a full-time. I can't remember what happened in 2018, but I'm guaranteeing there was something that happened in schools. And I had them when I was a building administrator. I'm in favor of them. But it didn't go anywhere. It would require, and please jump in, it requires full-time officers. So the schools would be open to it. It's something that happens at the town level and with the police department. So.
Yeah, so speaking for Boylston, I guess you kind of got to ask yourself, what are you looking for? A lot of districts have one SRO that oversees all the schools, and that's a full-time position. But you got to add, I guess, what are you asking for? Are you asking for police in every school for safety and security? Or are you just looking to have a full-time SRO that oversees all schools? Those are two very different things. One required just one full-time position that's in the school, one required two positions. But ultimately, that would, for at least Boylston, that's not something we could kind of just figure out in our budget. Our budget's already set for the year. I'm not that familiar with budgets, but I'm guessing that for us, that would have to go to a special town meeting or something if we want to implement them for the August school year.
I know a neighboring community that has a regional school system, 70% of the officer's salary comes out of the school department budget, and 30% comes out of the town from where the officer is. Because they'll spend 70% of their time in the actual high school. So there's ways we can do it around. Whether it's a oil. Yeah. So if we were to make a Boylston Regional School District school resource officer, we'd probably do the 70% would come out of the school budget, 30% would come out of the town. I'm sure between Chief Annunziata and I, if he doesn't have anything lined up, we can supply it, and vice versa. We can accommodate that.
I'm saying the only way we get the 70% to cover our end
It's for both towns.
in the first place, right? So it's all town money.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I mean, it's not fair to the town of Boylston to have to pay for everything for Berlin as well. So that's why we come out of school budget.
Do you have any idea roughly what that would be?
I love to say it, but it depends on what step they're at, if they have a degree, or what stipends they get. I mean, a rough figure today, it basically costs $100,000 a year per officer, so it'd be a $70,000 bill.
There's money coming available. Because of recent incidents, there's packages, there's emergency monies being transferred, and maybe a district like this that doesn't have an established SRO position, which is very common in the state, may be open to getting grant monies or monies through that as it becomes federally available. There is emergency packages going through.
But I mean, we have a very open communication. We have an officer that just went to the RAD training, and I've already told Chief Annunziata that she's more than welcome to come over here. At our expense, because it's our students as well. So, we're into sharing as well until we can get something concrete and solidified.
What's interesting to me is to think about today. If we were building a police station in an elementary school today in this town, we'd probably put them in the same place, right? So they're right next to each other, because it seems like, from what I understand, most of these incidents is the response time. And the sooner you get there, the less likely it is that more people die, right? So, given that we don't have that here, but we do have we're not that far away. I mean, at least DES,
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things the ALICE program covers is it doesn't take a lot of time to hurt a lot of people. But you know the figure off the top of
3 to 5 minutes.
So it's, so even having it next door, I get the rationale behind it. But a lot of carnage can still occur in that very short amount of time. So I think I can get the number, but the way Alice breaks it down, there's a figure of amount of gunshots, depending if it's a gun that's used, amount of gunshots, what target, statistic target ratio is. It's a very large number in a 30-second period. Again, they're not, during these incidents, they're trying to cause the most damage. They don't have a target in mind.
You know what, thank you, I mean, that's a good, honest evaluation of the situation, and I don't think it's something that people even educators realize. I remember the first SRO that I ever had as a building administrator, it's like 2,000. You know, we have an SRO, we're safe. And then one day, I distinctly remember him turning to me and said, you're gonna have to keep yourself safe for a while, because we're not gonna be able to get it. It's not gonna be a snap of the finger when you're gonna do it. So that's the importance of the teachers and the administrators, being able to keep the building safe until somebody gets it. So it is everybody's responsibility.
So I work, prior to here, I worked for the Delhi Police Department, who has a very great SRO program with Shepherd Hill. And what we found is that what the school, yes, the school resource officer acts as a deterrent, but having that school resource officer available to the students and the staff on demand to close out some of those red flags is really beneficial. And what this SRO found is a lot of times this was the only opportunity kids had to talk to a law enforcement officer without having to go through an adult. And he was fed a lot of good information that the staff wasn't even aware of because they just went through the SRO. So that's kind of the SRO is more than just a hired gun in the school. They provide that bridge between one of our more vulnerable populations and law enforcement.
I thought the principals are here tonight, they weren't scheduled to be here, but they did come. So is there anything that you want to add about your buildings, or do you have any questions for the principals? Can answer questions too.
Hey, comment, Jack. As a parent, it's a tough conversation to listen to. It's uncomfortable, right? But I don't even want to think about these things. And I understand that we can only control what we control. But a lot of what we're talking about are reactive things, right? And it's hard to hear that this is a way of life that we have to prepare for and just get used to. It might be a reality, and that's what we have to do, but it certainly isn't an easy thing to digest. So certainly don't want to put any of the officers on the spot today, but if there's any way that maybe we could talk about some of the proactive things we do to prevent things that like this happen, without divulging tactical protocol that you use, but maybe in the future, just if there's any way for the departments to maybe talk about some of the principles that you use to just kind of keep an eye on the communities and take a more proactive approach and maybe share that with the community. That might be a helpful perspective to have for conversation.
So that's one of the great things about these crisis meetings that superintendent was talking about, where we meet biannually, is we're able to give recommendations. So one of the recommendations I met with superintendent last week with Carol was that we got to start doing controlled access points, where I know it's difficult. You can't compare our elementary school to Hondo because they're two very different animals. The elementary school doesn't have kids running up to the cars, coming and going as they please. Just they're older and it's just different. But one of the recommendations I'm going to be given is we have to have a controlled access point, meaning everyone goes in the front door, everyone goes out the front door unless there's an emergency. And that's a way we can slow down entry coming in, entry coming out. But that's what these meetings are about, is sharing this information, getting different perspectives, and then, again, instituting best practices for the safety of our schools.
I think that's a great idea. Thanks for sharing that. I don't know, maybe this is idealistic thinking, but even at a higher level, the problem is if somebody wakes up and decides they want to go kill a bunch of kids in the school. And so, to whatever extent departments can maybe share what measures can be taken and what they do to try to manage that. Not now, certainly, but.
Well, again, everything we do is proactive, is about help. So I'm asking you as a parent, if you see something, say something. If you see that red flag, if you notice something, the school bus drivers, the janitors, we're all in this collectively. I tell the kids, our job in our DARE program is all about help. The conversation with the 5th graders last week was, prior to the Buffalo incident, was that person needed help. Just like somebody sitting next to you may need help. And that make me more proud of anything if you've got them help. That's not tattletaling. That's not getting them in trouble. That's help. If we slow down you leaving the committee here and write you a ticket, you didn't crash, I tell the kids we helped you. So everything we do is proactive. So the tactics will always be secret. People can figure them out. But everything we do is help and communicating with the staff. When a bus driver tells an officer, hey, I noticed this, all right, I'll tell the school psychologist. And we're not there to spy. There's a letter of understanding. We have very strict guidance and rules as to what we can report and not report. And we share information to get the best help for that student or employee or visitor that may need help. So everything we do is proactive.
I think one of the more proactive things the school department has done is hired those extra counselors. This year, it wasn't last year too, right, Diane? But this year, we've seen like a very high number of people suffering from mental health emergencies. At least to me, it seems like it's been an overwhelming amount this year, and that's with having these extra counselors. But I mean, nationwide, we have a mental health crisis, and it's probably isn't politically correct, but we can pump these kids full of drugs immediately. Physicians can pump these kids full of drugs immediately, but to get in and see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you're waiting weeks, months. So even if those red flags are not overlooked, we're still waiting weeks, months to do it. It puts the school in a hard position because they see these problems. They have the counselors there to deal with it, but they can only deal with it in school. And if there's no place to put them out there, that's it. Everyone goes hands tied. That's a nationwide problem that unfortunately we're not going to solve here.
Yeah, and just to be clear, my comment wasn't to suggest that there aren't proactive things. I absolutely know there are, and I would encourage a conversation about them to whatever extent we can with the community where we can feel engaged and not and complement the reactive procedures that we're putting in place, but also know that we aren't just fortifying windows and waiting, right? And it sounds like that stuff is happening, and to whatever extent we can show it to the community, I think will help the conversation.
Right, yeah, no, I mean, transparency, right? And I think that, again, that I've kind of gotten some feedback that some of the parents aren't happy with the ALICE program itself. But again, I think a lot of that is due to the lack of familiarity with the program. I think it's one of those things that if we educate parents on it, they're gonna understand why we're using that program.
Absolutely, you both make good points about mental health. I think we need to go further and say, we look at these incidents, it's men's mental health, it's young men's mental health. And I'm interested to look next year at what we can do in the high school in particular to help counteract that. Other programs we can bring, the things we can do in particular for young men to try to help those who might be heading down a bad path.
So I think his name's Jake Olano. He was a former psychologist here. He runs a mentoring group. The kind of quote to help with those. But there's more people who need a mentorship and volunteers, unfortunately.
Well, we run that program through Jake, and Yeah, boys only. We got a girls only.
Yeah, they came and spoke, the two people, there was a girls one
Yeah.
out of Clinton, and,
Yeah, right.
yeah, that was
So
very
they
sweet.
spoke, they came to the school committee meeting.
Yes, he came to a school committee meeting in Swinburne, yes. Jason, you say?
No, I was just going to, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about, the mental health crisis. It really is, it's those students that feel isolated, that don't feel connected, to their schools and to their community. Research shows that, a high percentage of these individuals that perform these acts are, those that feel isolated and not connected. And so programs like the mentoring program, as well as the addition of another school adjustment counselor, can only help. But I think it has got to be a community effort, including parents. Because again, the schools can only do so much. And, students that we have been able to flag, we have very good communication between the parents and the counselors. So if a student, did have a difficult night or did, get up and the parent noticed something that was a little bit off, they're on the phone or they're on their email and saying, hey, can you check in? But it's that type of communication that is so important. And I can't stress this enough, looking at your kids' social media. It's so important because oftentimes it is communicated through social media.
If I could say something. Thank you, officers, for being here. I think when I initially came into tonight, I was going to ask you some slightly different questions based on the events that happened, but from hearing you talk, you mentioned parents and anxiety. I think that's a lot of the questions we got were over anxiety. You mentioned mental health. You mentioned, Officer Goody, over the past 6 months, you're very proud of the two towns coming together and communicating more than you've ever seen.
Yeah.
That one comment to me, that was sort of the surprise in the wake of. I mean, Tohoto's been regionalized for a while now. The entire district's been regionalized since 2019, am I correct, right? And it's only within the last 6 months that you're saying you've noticed a change in communication between the towns. The two towns coming together to take care of one school district, one set of kids. So that's what really stuck out to me and sort of changed my mind tonight. And I think I was going to ask you, what of the events from last week in Texas do you see that's making you change your mind, or is there any lessons you can take from it that makes you change the way you approach school security and all that? But I think I just want to say thank you for coming here and speaking, telling me as a parent, hopefully telling the other parents, and I would like to see if the school committee wants to have that periodically throughout the year, just to sort of continue to build that community. One of our goals this year was community engagement, and kind of did drop off a little bit, but I think this is a perfect example of where we can build that community engagement through the committee, through the two departments, the one school district, the two towns. So hopefully next year, maybe we can talk about having you back again more regularly. If there's a budget issue that needs to be figured out, I'm sure we can figure it out. But, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to add, Chief Annunziata and I, we meet with area chiefs frequently, and we meet with chiefs that would actually have the premise of respond here. So it's not just about Berlin, Boylston, we include Clinton and Sterling, we have everybody because we're all on the same team, and we call it the blue team, and we all help each other. So it just doesn't end with Berlin and Boylston. It's all the bordering towns too that we also invite. We're our coffee partners, and school safety is probably one of our number one priorities when we meet for
for coffee. Like your point of view, I also want to thank Mr. Ranger for being here, discussing with us, and to that point, the more we can welcome and invite those other conversations as part of the conversation. Because, you know, this is budgetary, and that requires a lot of coordination between different people in town. Thank you.
I wanted to say a special thank you because not just for coming tonight, but because you put yourselves out there for all of us. And I'm so grateful for all of you. I mean, I just think it's wonderful that, you know, you're coming here, you're speaking to us, you're making us feel better. We're all parents. We all have kids in the school and we have the same concerns that everybody else does. And I know I feel really, really good after hearing from you. Everybody has work to do, but it's just really nice to know how much work you guys are doing behind the scenes. And even besides this, just thank you for everything you do for our communities. Very grateful.
Well, one thing I will add on a personal note, someone asked me if I have these conversations at home with my kids. I know, and I'm sure everyone knows your kids are way more smarter than we do, more smart than we give them credit to. Please don't take that from my you know, but to reduce their anxiety, have these conversations at dinner time. I'm sure they're hearing rumors. You might as well give them facts, and hopefully reduce some anxiety. Where this is an unfortunate part of our lives, have those difficult conversations with them.
Tomorrow's field day in Berlin, we'll be playing kickball, and the fire department will be there helping. And we included 2 years ago, the highway department, they come down, they're part of the community. And they come down with the plows and trucks and everything like that. So we're interactive, and I have to go back. When I say 6 months, I felt the change in the two chiefs. Let me be clear about that. 5 years ago, John and I started working together, close ties with Diane. It felt good the last few years to be able to call her and know her. You know, it was always the Mason-Dixon line for me when I went up the other road. Where did the kids go? And it was different rules of thought, and the towns didn't work as close together. The schools did. And we did get in here, and we did work together with his staff. So I just want to say the administration changed, and they both have a clear message as parents that it's important about the kids in the schools. And they encourage all their officers that have different likes and traits to be involved in the school. So not just 6 months, but we've made a lot of progress in that time. And if you really want to invite us back, the superintendent will warn you, I can go for a long time. So you're paid by the hour, you know.
All right, at this time, I'd like to release the principals. You can go home and see your families.
I told them.
Oh, and the officers too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's how that works.
We appreciate your time.
Hey, just remember, he gets a 4-hour minimum, so.
Yeah, that's it. Salary.
You're gonna play in the 4 hours for the next meeting.
Bye, guys. Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Okay. We are going to move on to the superintendent evaluation. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kind of go through the process, for us as well as for the public. For the first time, this was the first time for the majority of the board completing the report. This year, we did not do the summarization as I was concerned it could lend itself to bias. Additionally, while past reports were impressive, completing the evaluation as an individual can take actual days. Involved in this process are any, or in my case, all, of the following: review the year's agendas, minutes, subsequent notes, review of the superintendent goal updates, watching past meetings to review, delving into the rubric, and actual writing itself. It's a very timely process, very worthwhile, and I can tell you that the members gave it their all. Considering all of this because the summarization is not an essential part of the evaluation, but rather a beautiful extra, it's not in this year's report. Knowing how much work this was for the members, as well as the added hurdle of the new rubric after the superintendent's goals had been presented, amended, and accepted, I want to thank every one of you genuinely for the immense amount of time that went into understanding the task as well as completing it, and especially for the thoughtful comments. This is a very busy time of year in everyone's lives, and I know the hours that went into completing it, so thank you. So now I'm going to explain the evaluation process. I watched Chairman Spencer's presentation from last year. He did a wonderful job laying out the process, so I'm going to model what he did. After my explanation, I will begin by asking Superintendent Zangi if he has any comments or questions for the committee pertaining to the evaluation. All answers and questions need to be directed to the superintendent from the committee. There is to be no discussion or deliberation between members because there is no motion on the floor. However, you can engage with the superintendent. When that open question and answer period ends, in order to deliberate, I will ask for a motion, and that will be to accept the final report as written. Even if you feel that it needs to be amended, we cannot discuss it until the motion is made, seconded, and we've gotten to the discussion portion. If during that portion an amendment is warranted, the motion for an amendment can be made during the discussion and voted upon. When we are done, I will ask all in favor of accepting the school committee superintendent evaluation report as written or with amendments, if any, and we will vote. I will then ask for a motion to approve the overall rating of whatever our choice is for the 2021-22 superintendent's evaluation performance. Are there any questions? Okay. Before I hand it over to the superintendent, I just wanted to share a few notes that I took. We didn't have a summary, but I went through and pulled out what I could from people's final thoughts. Superintendent Zangi has many strengths. He's an effective leader. He's a good manager. He's surrounded himself by highly competent leadership team. He's worked effectively with town officials for budget approvals. What was mentioned over and over again is that he prioritizes student learning and he always has the student's best interests at heart. And I think that's really, really important. He kept current with DESE, which was constantly changing. He was on call for crises, completed his goals despite everything changing and such upheaval. He works tirelessly. He puts immense time and energy to complete and deliver on goals. The budget was complete and approved despite all of the changes in DESE guidelines and the resignation of the chair during budget season. It was not easy for him, and he got that extra counselor approved when it was questioned by a lot of people. And so kudos to Superintendent Zangi for standing up for that. He has straightforward communication with the community. The suggestions that came from the board were to work on community and community engagement together with the school committee, because we need to engage more to alleviate his burden. Some people asked if he could work on his communication style with parents. Some people asked for more student voices, and they proposed that we follow the equity survey as suggested in the fall for the students. Some people want the equity work to be taken in-house, to reallocate financial resources on the unique character of the BBRSD without inside influence. And we have created a new budget and finance subcommittee. And we know that they will work together with Superintendent Zangi, and we're hoping that's something that we can look forward to in the fall. There were 5 members, and the overall rating was proficient. And with that, I will turn it over to the superintendent.
I didn't know I was supposed to do anything. I thought I,
Yeah, just for questions, comments.
I did have one question. Whoever said bring equity in-house, does that mean not have, for us to do it here, or not have Teachers 21?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think we were talking about that. We actually talked about that as a budget item today, and we did put aside a little bit just in case, but we're committed to, the style we use is a train-the-trainer style. So when we brought them in, the whole goal was at some point we would not need them anymore. So we think we're at that point now. We might bring somebody in just to talk to the staff, just like a 1 or 2 hour presentation, but we think we're on our way. We think we've done enough. We've got enough people involved now that we can continue this work, sort of make it our own. Because a lot of the stuff they do, it's just general equity stuff, and it's our goal to make it our own. And so I think we're at that point now, so.
Do you want feedback? Yeah, on that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, the comment was basically, it was mostly a budget issue. Given all the problems the last 2 years, after seeing the assessment scores this year, I was hoping whatever money could possibly be found to be allocated to getting those kids back up to speed should take precedence over anything else. What I was saying.
And that was our thought.
Any other questions or comments?
No, thank you.
That's great.
Thank you. Appreciate the time we took to, I know that we have to do it for the collaborative, say process for their sort of their director. I know it's not fun to do that stuff, so thank you.
Could I have a motion to approve the final superintendent evaluation report as written? Second. Discussion.
We've heard feedback at times, or the school committee shared feedback that it is essentially a rubber stamp for the superintendent. And I think that if you were to read the comments we made, we appropriately gave constructive criticism to him. I think Jeff would probably disagree with any idea that we are a rubber stamp for what he wants to do. But I just wanted to make that comment. We all 5 members that completed the evaluation did rate him as proficient, which is the standard across the state, with some variance from one thing to the next. But I think generally speaking, there was a lot of consistency across everyone's rating as I had the opportunity to read them, and feel really confident that we've made the right choice.
All right, I would just add that as I just joined, I never participated, so I agree with you what I should say.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
All right, so we are in the motion. All in favor to accept the, to approve the final superintendent evaluation report as written?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, it passes. We have approved the final superintendent evaluation report as written. Could I have a motion to approve the, not that I'm surprised, but could I have a motion to approve the superintendent evaluation rating of proficient for the 2021-22 school year? Second? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Opposed? Is there anyone that will abstain? All right. The motion to approve the superintendent evaluation rating of proficient for the school year passes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work. It's not an easy job. As becoming chair quite suddenly, I've had an insider look at what goes on at central office, and God bless these people. I mean, they work tirelessly. There's things coming at them sideways all the time, and they still get all the work done. They care so much about the students, and no matter how things are said, they still show up for the job, and I appreciate that. I really do. Ms. Costello, would you like to give us an update on teaching and learning?
Sure. Positive things that are going on in the
Yes.
district that I wanted to share with you this evening. I did want to mention a follow-up to Bob's presentation before when we spoke about the future budget priority, the piece of financial stability and sustainability. We have added that to your 10-year plan already that we've worked on, and we'll continue to do that. This summer, we finalize that to bring to the school committee in the fall. So all of the figures that we presented to you, we have already incorporated, so you can forget about that when Bob meets with the budget board. So I did want to mention that before I forgot.
Microphone.
Can you hear me? You're very soft. Yeah. Here it is. So a couple of good things happening around the district. We are a go for the Summer Acceleration Academy again this year. It said we were missing 1 or 2 folks last week. I have everybody in place now, including a nurse. We have the buses set
to go, and we're very excited about that. This year, we'll be running our Acceleration Academy from August 15th. It's Monday to Friday, August 19th. We'll be inviting students, specific students in from grades K, 1, and 2. Those are current students in the district from both Berlin and Boylston Elementary. So I'm grateful for that. Keeping in mind, that's ESSER 3 funds, and we're targeting that money on what we feel are we're going to get the most out of for that kind of short period of time, although we're lengthening the time of the day that we're doing that. Before we did it, we ran the program from about 8:30 to 11:30, 12. We're running it until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so we have extended time. We're building in math and ELA support for those children as well. So that'll be an invitation only to begin with, unless we don't have enough numbers, but we're limiting the classes to about 10 to 12 students each. So you'll be hearing more about that because invitations are going out as well. I don't know if anybody had a question about the academy at this.
So there's one, okay, so there's one kindergarten, one first, one second.
Right, on 1 second, right. We also have a special educator on board, and we have 5 paraprofessionals joining us, so.
And only 12 kids per grade, you said, or 12 total?
Oh, yeah, 12 children per grade level. That's what we're looking at as an ideal classroom, give or take the numbers here or there. If we have 15 students, we would probably take them, but we don't want to exceed that by too many students, because then that will take away from the intention, which is to really target those children who need that additional support, who face greater gaps in their learning, and we want to get them ready to go for the school year.
I'd love to see some kind of parent survey after that, or some kind of report back to see if it's been done and that's like that in the future.
I would love to do, we did run a parent survey last year with the program when it was funded through a specific grant for that program, but we can certainly do that again. And thank you for saying that, because we're doing this through grant funding. We're not sure how long the funding will be available to us, but if we can figure out a way to do that through some other grant, so we would definitely want to continue this regularly. But it's especially imperative now to run this kind of program, I think, in the summer. So I wanted to just do a quick shout out to Jessica Gallagher. She has been handling our internship program. She's been putting together a database this year for us. She ran the panels, the career panels at Tohoto for grades 10 and 11. She's going to be working hopefully again with us next year on that, supporting the council when they shift positions in the counseling office, and we have that college and career counselor in place. We'll be taking over the internship program the following year. But for next year, so we intended to focus this year on those panel discussions, bringing these folks in from different fields in STEM and other areas to kind of light the fire of the children to see what they potentially could be and do. Next year, we'll be having that as well. We'll be offering shadowing opportunities. I know some teachers are very excited about doing field trips out into the STEM field. Jessica has reached out to some of the corporations that are community members who've invited our students to come in for that purpose. So, we'll look for funding for field trips, but that's okay. If we have the places, we'll figure out a way to send them there. So that's great. And then the following year, we'll start those internship program for the seniors. So it's on target.
And also, you're looking for funding opportunities through those corporations, because some will have offices that are just dedicated to schools, that, where they have an education component. They have an arm of their organization that just deals with that kind of stuff. So we'll be looking at that. As much as we can fund it without straining the budget, we will.
Carol, do you have some kind of database for parents that want to, in the tech field, that can give you that information that it helps?
Yes, I can send you the email to Jessica. She's been reaching out. I had put something in my newsletter, and I know Diane had been putting something into Tohoto today. If you have a contact or you know anybody in the community other than the ones we've got, I would send that along to us, but we keep advertising to send that information to us. So the more we can add, the better opportunities for the students. So. The other person I wanted to mention tonight is Mike Reel. Mike Reel is a parent at Tohoto. He has been instrumental in bringing the Grade 5 Connects Challenge to both the elementary schools each year. For the past several years, we had to hold off for 1 year because of COVID. But Mike is enthusiastic. He brings his team from Thermo Fisher Dynamic, and we are in awe of what he does. He gave the teachers in the 5th grade all new kits, Connects kits, this year because he felt that those others were a little worn, a little used. They were a couple of years old, but he's like, here's brand new kits. And we're going to be running that on Friday, June 10th, from 9 to 11:30. If you are around and you want to stop by Boylston Elementary School, they switch between the schools each year. Please come by and see this. It's a great, the students practice a challenge during the spring. They work on what they're going to do. They have to do an engineering plan. Then when they get into the building, everything is disassembled. They have to actually assemble the product that they've created. They have a specific problem that they have to solve with that product. They have to do the engineering plan, they have to display that, and then they're judged on what and why they've done what they've done. So it's so cool. Yeah, so please come by if you're able to do that. And then finally, I just also want to mention our parent camps have run again this year for incoming kindergarten students at both elementary schools. And Tohoto will be hosting their parent camp for incoming 5th to 6th graders. And that is Thursday from 5 to 6:30. So parents should have gotten invitations for that as well.
I heard the kindergarten one was wonderful. Everybody said great things. We had COVID, so I was unfortunately unable to attend.
I know, we knew that. But you got your bag.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Did you get your
We'll have to chat after. We didn't get it, but I heard it was great.
Did you, Jessica?
We had COVID too.
Oh.
All right, so we'll have
I'll
to
get you your.
email Ace or something. Yeah, I heard everybody I spoke with said it went really well, and it was a really positive and productive evening.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll communicate that
Yeah.
with the principal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Mr. Mara, the Director of the Technology Department, will give us an update.
Good evening. So I have just the one item in my report. I just wanted to make you all aware that in the fall, when we distribute Chromebooks, this year we will be offering an insurance program for, again, it's optional for parents that would like to, for a $20 fee per year. It'll cover accidental damage, so cracked screens, theft, any kind of major damage. It'll help, again, hopefully allay the cost of having to replace a Chromebook, because full replacement's around $300, but this insurance program will only be $20. So, more information, I'll be sending something out in August to the middle high school parents through School Messenger with more details. But again, I just want to make sure you guys were aware of the program. And again, in my report, I talked about, we got 4 different offers. It turned out we went with the one that also had the best price. But it wasn't solely that. I looked at turnaround times, what was covered, lack of deductibles, and any extra fees, so that parents know, if they choose to take this insurance, it'll be a $20 cost for the year, and that's if they won't get hit with any surprises. You guys have any questions?
I have one quick question. How many damages do you see a year?
Yeah, so it's about 5 to 8% of the number of Chromebooks we have. So we have close to 1,000 now at this point. So it's somewhere around 50 to 80 that we see damaged. Some are purely accidental, and Dell will cover some things, and they won't cover others. We're just at a point, again, when we first rolled those up to everybody, we needed to do it quick. We needed to not worry about were we ever going to recoup any losses. But now that it's been 2 years and again, COVID is hopefully going to be less of an issue. We can kind of hold the line a little bit better, and if we don't, we won't be able to sustain, so.
That's the other thing, if I could just jump in, we're used to dealing with textbooks. And, if something happens with textbook, we charge you for that. You come through at graduation, and it happens in ninth grade, and also in 12th grade, you get this bill. So this is sort of new territory for us, so we're hoping to provide a way that they don't get this $300 bill in the 12th grade.
Okay, we have a negotiation subcommittee update. Basically, our last meeting was canceled. There were members on both sides who couldn't attend, so our next meeting is Wednesday, June 22nd from 8 to 1 p.m. The school committee self-evaluation is very close to being done. I hope to have that done within the next day. The superintendent evaluation did take all of my attention. And then, Mr. Wilbur, do you have an election subcommittee update for us?
Can I ask you a question on negotiation first? Are we gonna have another school committee meeting?
After that, based on the result, because right now it says next school committee meeting is August 31st, but is that negotiation subcommittee or negotiation session?
Once the contract is settled and agreed upon, we will need to have an executive session to discuss, then an open session.
Prior to August 31st?
Fingers crossed, negotiations are
Okay.
done by then.
Okay.
So if they're finished at this meeting, we then schedule one.
That means, so.
Okay.
And Zoom is still an option for the state until 2023. If you have to be on vacation or whatever, we settle a contract. It is still an option.
Okay. Election subcommittee update would be that nomination papers are available, can be picked up from either the Boylston Town Clerk, the Berlin Town Clerk, or myself. They are due back to the town clerks by July 26th, at which point anyone interested in running for the seats will have to have collected 42 signatures from residents of Berlin and or Boylston. And yeah, this will really be the last school committee meeting, except for the potential negotiation one. This will be discussed because by the time you get to August 31st, they would have been due back and been certified with the state. So July 26th is the due date to return them, but they are available now.
Thank you, Adam. He's done a lot of work, Mr. Topman as well, but really impressive. Thank you for picking that up and running with it and getting everything done so efficiently. We're going to move on to our business items. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the 2022-23 school committee meeting schedule. Second?
Second.
Discussion.
So my only thing is we have to add meeting for this one that Christy just said.
That would be for this year.
That's not for this school year, that's
It would
what
technically
you're
be
voting
for
on is
the
for
current
next
school year.
So it will, and we don't have to have it on a calendar, any, a meeting can be scheduled at any time for the chair.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I am an aye as well. Opposed? Motion to approve the 2022-23 school committee meeting schedule passes. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve policy AC, the non-discrimination policy, including harassment and retaliation. Could I have a motion?
I make a motion to refer AC, ACAB, DJICK back to the policy subcommittee for additional.
Could I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, so my reasoning here is that we've all been very busy with the superintendent evaluation and we're concerned around safety in school. You know, I myself have not been able to give the time to really read through this and understand what the changes are from what is in place now. So unless there's a legal reason to have to do it now, I prefer that we put this back to the policy subcommittee. I'll have some more time to review it and get this in time for the next.
Does anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I've read it and dissected it, and I think that it needs to go back to the committee too, for the stronger language.
Thank you, Julie, appreciate your time with that. Okay, so, I'm done.
So isn't that the first reading as well? All the ideas that we gave you tonight? Okay, yeah. All right, so you know that. All right. We're gonna need a couple of those. To discuss it also. So,
Oh, no.
or we can just.
Individual members of the committee can send those to the subcommittee, right, without doing the law. So someone wanted, Christie, is that accurate?
I'm sorry.
If an individual member of the committee wanted to review it and send their thoughts to the subcommittee, they could do that without violating any kind of open meeting law. We can look at it, and we can
Yeah,
check
we can
together.
figure it out.
Does it need to go to the subcommittee, or we just need to work on it? Discuss it?
That would be a good idea. So are you tabling it to another meeting? Discuss it.
Motion to send it back.
So motion on the table to send it. Okay.
I think the logistics here, I mean, we can't deliberate with your notes at subcommittee. We have notes that want to change, that's be done at school.
So let's go to the table, and let's go to back the thing down and go to the table.
And perhaps be on the agenda of the meeting that we now that.
That's great. Well, no, we have to cover this.
Yes, Mr. Wilbur brings concerns to the community at large, and then policy can discuss those probable or possible changes at their.
Okay, so Adam has made a motion to table,
There's a second subcommittee motion to table. Now we have to change that.
okay, so yep, so we have to vote on that motion that's opening, correct. All those in favor of sending the policies back to the subcommittee? All those opposed?
Okay.
Nay. Okay. It does
I'll
not
make a
pass.
motion
Thank you.
to table BCD on the agenda, so policy AC, policy ACAB, policy JICK. Table those three items that are up for vote till our next school meeting.
Could I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. All in favor of tabling policy AC, policy ACAB, and policy JICK until the next school committee meeting?
Aye.
Second? I mean, sorry, opposed? It's been a long day. Motion to table those three policies passes. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the SEAL Biliteracy Coordinator job description. Could I have a motion?
So
Second? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, opposed? Motion to approve the seal of biliteracy coordinator job description passes. So Christy, in listening to Mr. Conry today, are we voting for the regional transportation reimbursement and the annual authorization of student accounts?
Yes.
We are.
And not the result for.
Oh, not the student accounts though.
You said one and not the other.
Yeah. Yeah, so, okay, so we're going to vote on, I'd like a motion to approve the regional transportation reimbursement. Second.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, opposed? Motion to approve the regional transportation reimbursement passes. We're going to skip the authorization of student activity accounts. We will do that at the first meeting. Excellent. Okay. Could I have a motion to approve the annual authorization of revolving funds? Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, opposed? Motion to approve the annual authorization of revolving funds passes. I would like a motion to approve the unpaid balances owed to the district and acceptance of donations. Second? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I am an aye as well. Motion to accept the unpaid balances owed to district and acceptance of donations passes. I would like a motion to approve the elementary literacy tutoring job description. Second? Discussion?
So there's just gonna be one.
Will be two, one in each.
Oh, all right, okay, all
Yes.
right, thanks.
Any other questions? Excellent question, Megan. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, opposed. Motion to approve the elementary literacy tutor job description passes. So I was going to say that our next meeting is August 17th if needed, but we were hoping to meet on the 31st, but it looks like we may meet before then, depending upon what happens at teacher negotiations. So we'll let you know when we know. Otherwise, we will see you on hopefully August 31st, but we'll see you before then as well. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor? I'm an aye as well. This concludes our last this concludes our meeting. Fortunately, not the last one. Thank you very much.